much time. I'm deep in the woods right now, hiding behind a tree, trying not to freak out. Because tonight, we're talking about Bigfoot. That's right. It's no longer a question if Bigfoot is real. He or she is out here somewhere. And apparently, they've been very busy. My friend Phillip James Latham joins me tonight, fresh off producing his new documentary, American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Monster. He's got stories about ancient columns discovered beneath Egyptian pyramids, secret moon meetings with the Intergalactic Federation, and something mysterious called the Solar Warden. But more importantly, he's had a first-hand encounter. We're going to share actual audio from the 1970s capturing two big feet having a conversation, historical accounts of Bigfoot communicating and befriending indigenous tribes, and a truly unforgettable story involving a lonely man in a cabin and a very forward female Sasquatch. Yeah, it's exactly what you think. Okay, something's definitely here. If I don't make it back, tell Phil he was right about everything. And welcome back to the Meet My Friends podcast.
No, I feel like doing...
The drama. Do you have a dog?
No, I have 4 cats.
Archie, these dogs are, I mean, people say that your dog takes after the owner, so I always think about this whenever they're being like so extra, and I'm like, I can't be this extra.
You bear responsibility to a certain degree, though.
I do. I'm accountable. If anyone, like, I've gone to therapy, okay? I'm like, get your ball. Okay.
Maybe we need to start a business where we have dog therapy.
No, that would be...
I mean, I feel like it would crush.
That would be so lucrative.
Yeah.
If I was rich, I'd already be so much more rich because of these genius ideas and my genius friends.
I mean, it takes money to make money, as the saying goes.
What a great liaison to introducing Phil Latham today. One of my guests on the Meet My Friends podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Really excited to have you. Phil and I date back to 2018 when I made my first short film. And you were attached to produce.
Yep.
And now you're attached to produce numerous projects that we have coming down the pipeline.
Correct. And
you're producing your own as well. And you've done tons of producing since then.
I have.
And we were just talking about Bigfoot suits and summer Sasquatch, which you have to see. I think you should see it on shrooms, though, honestly. Okay. It's like, it's a journey about migrating Bigfoot.
Awesome.
And a family of them. And the dynamics of this family are fascinating because they're not human. Like, you expect to watch a movie like this and, like, you think the filmmaker will want you to connect with the characters in a certain way. And the filmmaker was so original and so thoughtful in making them their own species. And I'm sure I don't know the extent of like their research and like where they got the personality for them, but they're like hilarious and comical. And, you know, it's a movie about life and death throughout a season of migration. And without spoiling anything, like, the natural ways that things occur in the movie between life and death are shocking, real, and like really grounded and funny and also dark. Because like if I watched that reality show Alone where they send a bunch of survivalists
it's one of my favorite.
Yeah, out into the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And
the Arctic Circle.
Exactly.
They survive.
And,
okay.
And like someone will have to be eliminated because they scraped themselves with an arrow on their leg. Like, and that could become an infectious thing and they have to take themselves out.
There was one guy who like accidentally set his whole like shelter on fire because he had a fire inside and like all the camera equipment and stuff burned up. It was like a slow motion tragedy, like just watching it happen. But yeah, I love that show. And the guy that won the 100-day survival, like you had to survive for 100 days and you won $1 million or whatever. Yeah, that guy. I said from like the first episode, I was like, that guy's gonna win.
Really? He just had the energy.
You can just tell. Like this,
he was a hermit or what?
This dude was like one with nature to the fullest extent. And what's like, so I guess that's kind of a good segue because, you know, talking about the Bigfoot movie. Yeah. I think one of the things that you wanted me to talk about was the film that I'm currently working on.
Absolutely. Okay. That's like literally what I've been so excited to talk to you about. I feel like, so you're currently working on a film. It's in post-production. I think I want to start from like what it was like preparing to go out and make a doc about Bigfoot and like what it was like preparing to bring a crew out into the woods to do that, and then we can talk about the experience that you had while you were doing it.
Sure. So I produced a film called Missing 411, The UFO Connection, with a guy named Dave Politis, who has an organization in which he researches Bigfoot, and he is essentially like on the hunt, you know, not in a violent way necessarily, and we can get into all of the different dynamics of things like that. But yeah, so he did UFO Connection with Dave, and then the next movie that he wanted to do was this film about Bigfoot. So him being a pretty prominent figure in that community of researchers, it was not difficult to like bring in a bunch of the other people that he's, you know, associated with, has worked with, et cetera, et cetera. He put together like, you know, kind of his dream team of researchers and, you know, people that have had various experiences. And yeah, we just kind of started out going around the country filming people.
And you were talking to them about like what their experiences with Bigfoot were like?
So some people, yes. So we ended up going on like a cruise to Alaska for this. It was a Bigfoot cruise that Dave was a guest speaker on. And so we got to go to Alaska on this Royal Caribbean cruise that featured, you know, I think it was like 250 people of the, you know, thousands that were on the cruise were explicitly there for this Bigfoot cruise. Okay. As part of it. On that cruise, we interviewed a bunch of the other guest speakers. Unfortunately, we didn't get to interview Dr. Meldrum, who's another pretty prominent figure in the community. He's been on TV a bunch of different times with various Bigfoot productions and such. But it was really interesting to find out, because honestly, I didn't really know very much about Bigfoot before starting this project. But you have dabbled in a lot of the paranormal stuff before. Sure. And right after I started working with Phil on Gothic Springs, I quickly identified Phil as like my cornerstoner buddy. Like he was the one rare person at the party that I could probably take a break from talking and like holding court for the party goers, and Phil could talk to me about something and I could just sit there and like enjoy, you know? If nothing else, it would probably be an interesting conversation.
Absolutely. I remember the first like social event where we were talking, you're like, hey, if at any, we're passing a joint back and forth, and you said to me, you're like, hey, if at any point I'm talking too much, you can just tell me to shut up and I'll just like be cool with that.
My wife has learned that trick pretty early on in our relationship.
Well, I believe it because Rosie's like, she's with you 24/7, but I could eat it up for days.
Sometimes I start into a story and she's like, okay, get to the point.
I love detail. I will milk every drop of detail. I'll be like,
what I figured.
I was literally like, someone will be telling me something, like, hold on, what were you wearing? Hold on. What was the weather like outside? Okay. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
I have to like be in the moment.
What was the humidity like that day?
Were you sweating or? So wait, let's go back to you.
You know, we started out in this venture, and like I said, I didn't know a whole lot about Bigfoot, but I came to realize that I guess the debate in the macro sense is no longer like, is Bigfoot a real thing, or is Bigfoot just this, you know, made up creature, like, you know, the Loch Ness monster, which also, you know, asterisk, maybe could be real. And then I guess I should also kind of put out a disclaimer that I'm of the mindset that, like, you need to question everything in reality. And based on a lot of the other work that I've been involved with, you know, in regards to like consciousness and multidimensionality of reality and, you know, all those kinds of things, which also has like scientific research to back it up at this point. What are we living in? Is it a simulation? That's a whole nother like rabbit hole of conversation. But I digress back to Bigfoot in saying that, like, it was interesting to me to realize that it's more what is Bigfoot than is Bigfoot real. That's the debate right now, even within the community. And I think that there's a lot of overlap in understanding of what the answer to that is. I myself can't say that I'm like definitively convinced in one camp or the other. So I guess I'll break down the two primary camps of, or like fields of thought. One group thinks that Bigfoot is a descendant of a primate, an ancient primate called Gigantopithecus.
Okay.
And there's people that have like built recreations of what they believe these things to look like. They're like 10 to 12 feet tall. And I started to mention Dr. Meldrum. His research is largely based on the discovery of bone fragments from China that date back to like, you know, 10,000 years ago or something like that. It's like a partial jawbone or something. There was like 2 or 3 pieces. But there's really been no other documented evidence of this species of creature since. So to me, that comes with like a heavy grain of salt.
Right. Because we would probably have a lot more bone structures that we found throughout the years.
Well, and then, so, yeah, okay, so I'll keep going through this like progression of understanding that I've come to through this, because Dave Paulides has actually written a bunch of books about Bigfoot. He wrote the Hoopa Project. He wrote another book called Bigfoot, Wild Men, and Giants, which is actually like on its 3rd edition right now. That book is fascinating to me because it actually goes over the historical features and like documentation of all of these instances and publications where people were reporting sightings of wild men, giants, or, you know, Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever the nomenclature.
Whatever their description is.
Right. And that's another interesting thing. Everywhere in the world, there are these creatures. There are reported sightings of these creatures. And they all have different names. Yeti, Sasquatch, Bigfoot. And then, you know, from a First Nations perspective, individual tribes have individual names for these creatures. And one of the kind of ways of thinking about them is that they are a tribal species, which is why it was interesting to talk about Summer of Sasquatch, that, you know, it's following a family.
Right. As it migrates through a summer into a winter, over the course of a year. I think the movie's over the course of a year.
Makes sense.
We went and saw that movie and we had no idea what we were getting into. And my sister and I, we love a movie like that. We were sitting in the theater just slapping each other's legs.
Sure,
you know?
What
is happening right now?
It's crazy because, like, and
I think we cried, we laughed.
I'm
like
sure.
That movie was a...
Well, and so
it would have been better insurance.
That's really funny that you describe them in these ways, because that's what people's testimony reflects as well, is that these creatures, animals, beings, whatever, you know, vernacular you want to use, have characteristics of human-like behaviors. So then really the bifurcation comes from, are they this like primate, you know, dumb ape species, or are they potentially this like hyper intelligent, paranormal capable, you know, with all these different, you know, faculties of being able to cloak themselves to be invisible, or to transdimensionally teleport through portals, or make themselves super audible or not audible at all. And it's been a really interesting experience hearing from all of these people that have got, you know, decades worth of research under their belts.
I was fascinated by that because before you came, I knew you were coming on. We scheduled this a couple of weeks ago. I've been watching Bigfoot documentaries on whatever. My sister really likes one called Expedition Bigfoot, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And so I was watching that, and it's not just like, I feel like in the 80s, people were talking about the different calls that they would make or like the fur trails or whatever. But now we're talking about opening portals and actually like jumping into different space and time lines and like how they can walk behind a tree and then all of a sudden completely gone because they've walked behind some kind of curtain. And I just like it below. I mean, my belief on this stuff is like, I've always been like this since I was a kid. I'd rather believe in it than have someone prove me wrong because it's just so big and scary and crazy that I'm like, holy shit.
Well, and to the big and scary part of the conversation, I think that's another unfortunate part of the dynamics that are trying to be figured out within the community is like, are these beings malevolent, benevolent? Do they have like malintent for humans?
No, if they have malintent, they could be much more, they could do much more damage at this point.
So, right.
We are the what's the more primitive species if they are successfully traveling to different dimensions.
Right. So
there's no way.
And that's what's kind of really interesting about this whole conversation is like, if you subscribe to the belief that these things have these paranormal faculties and can traverse through dimensions and, in some camps believe that they are like stewards of the earth. Right. In terms of protecting nature.
An ancestral being.
Yeah. Like, a lot of First Nations tribes have lore that's been passed down generation to generation that believes that these beings they used to commune with and trade with. And, there's stories of these things like, participating in ceremonies with the different tribes.
Whoa.
Yeah. There's also sightings literally across the United States. We went to Pennsylvania, rural New York, Tennessee. We went to Oklahoma, although Oklahoma wasn't really for like a sighting per se. It was to interview the forensic sketch artist that we feature, who did work with Dave on the Hoopa Project stuff. Yeah, like we went all over the country. We actually feature one of the doctors that was part of a team at Skinwalker Ranch.
Oh, yeah. We know Skinwalker Ranch. I've watched so many specials on Skinwalker Ranch.
That place is wild.
That place is crazy.
That place is wild. Yeah. So
the caves and all that stuff.
I don't want to spoil the story because like it's kind of one of the. I guess I don't know if they featured it on the show, but like I don't know if like
just spoil it.
NDAs or.
Oh, yeah. I see. Okay.
But there's a really cool story that came from Skinwalker Ranch that this guy tells that supports the whole paranormal aspect of the conversation.
Okay. In regards to Bigfoot being potentially like more of a intergalactic creature versus a earth dwelling creature.
But see, even there, it's not to say that Bigfoot doesn't dwell on the earth.
Wait, can I interrupt?
Sure.
Did you hear about the intergalactic meeting inside the moon that happened last week?
No.
So
tell me about this.
So there are people like on TikTok, and there's two of them are really prominent. There's a girl that's like out in the desert, and then there's this guy who like travels all around and does these weird like hotel room conference chats. But basically, they are tied through transcendental meditation to a certain being that they have a relationship with. And
that tracks.
And so the girl that I follow, she was invited during a meditation session to this big meeting that was happening with intergalactic council.
Sure.
And so her life form, as she describes it when she does transcendental meditation, and if she ties it to this being, sometimes it takes her places.
So she astral projects her being into another being,
right? Or alongside it.
Yeah.
And it kind of guides her.
Yeah.
And so it took her to the moon, and she's like, "Why are we going to the moon?" And then it took her in the moon, and very much described like in Star Wars. I think it's the newer Star Wars with Natalie Portman. They have that council where they all the different aliens are in like a big round dome.
And I think they call it the Senate.
The Senate.
Yeah.
Described it I literally was like, this is Star Wars. But and said that she was there for a meeting about Earth, humanity, and the galaxy.
Well, you know what was also discovered last week, quote unquote.
What?
About the pyramids?
Oh, wait. I heard that they found pillars or columns or something.
Oh, yeah.
But what's the significance of this?
Okay, so this is a whole rabbit hole.
Okay.
Where do I start with this to unpack it? Okay, so...
Don't go too deep.
Yeah, I was going to say, do we say surface or do we... Well, pun intended, I guess.
Pun intended.
So Billy Carson runs a platform called Forbidden Knowledge.
Okay.
I've met Billy a number of times. Like, he's actually someone that we interviewed for another project. He's a really cool guy. And holy crap, this guy's recall in terms of like ancient history. He translated the Emerald Tablets.
He's like autistic with it. He can like, just pull it out.
This dude is so like
impressive.
Yes, he is just an impressive person. And he's honestly probably one of the nicest people that I've like interacted with in this whole like weird space.
Okay.
But one of the things that he does every year is he takes groups to Egypt to go to the pyramids.
We have to go.
I want to go so bad. I told him last time I saw him, I was like, Billy, it would mean the most to me if I was able.
How much money?
It's probably a good couple G's.
What if I find someone that
sponsors us?
Let's and then go. They get to come with us.
I'm with it.
I think I know someone to call.
Let's go. I got an inside track. I could literally text Billy right now.
Oh my God. Hey, I know, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, Lindsay's going to call me. You just do me the favor, call me now. Cause you're right. You're the one that I'm going to be calling. Cause I know you want to check this shit out. Okay.
Okay. So what got discovered, there was apparently a study done with
I'm not joking.
LiDAR. I'm 100%
We're
down
going
with
to
this.
Egypt.
Yeah, as long as I can bring my wife and kid.
I've always wanted to go, and this
me
is
too.
the perfect fucking situation. Okay, sorry.
100%.
Keep going. So Billy Carson.
Billy Carson tweeted out this study that was done by a group of scientists. Apparently what they discovered through radar or LiDAR, or one of the two or both, was these giant 6-kilometer pillars that have a spiral wrap.
6 kilometers?
Yes. Down under the pyramids that then connect to these two giant cubes.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's like the foot of a temple or something? What is this? Or is it the inside of like a ballroom?
We don't really know, I guess.
Okay.
So some of the stuff that Billy talks about in his research has indicated that like the pyramids were built when there was still water running like either close to or underneath or something different than it is now. These weren't these like dry, arid places geographically like they are today. They were like much more lush, just a different climate altogether. He believes, and I sort of subscribe to this line of thinking as well, is that the pyramids at some point in time were either energy generators or energy storage places, or like conduits, so to speak. Because like at some points they had gold caps on them, and like gold's super conductive and then you get into like Nikola Tesla's research and all that kind of stuff. And there's like a lot of ways that could make a lot of sense. Furthermore, there's actually a ring of these pyramids that wrap, and also like this is nothing to, mention that the alignment with celestial bodies that the pyramids have is like impossible to ignore. The configuration of them also reflect like computer components,
like microchips and stuff like that.
Motherboards.
Yeah.
So it's just like once you get into this, all this stuff, it's like just mind blowing.
It's crazy.
It's like you blow your mind every time you like find something new.
Right. God, we're so stupid. Humans are we're just so.
Well, I think that's kind of been intentional.
If this stuff is going on like this many years back, there had to have been like a wash, literally like the fucking Noah's Ark wash that just.
Younger Dryas. Have you seen Ancient Apocalypse with Graham Hancock? Oh my gosh. Best like love. I haven't watched season 2 yet, but season 1's awesome. I literally want to get like a Gobekli Tepe tattoo because it's sick.
Okay.
But he talks about like the Younger Dryas and the floods and all of the physical evidence that exists around the world for this like huge cataclysmic event that happened that flooded the earth. It was like 12,800 years ago. There's just like a very specific date. I think that's close to right. 10,000, I don't know, whatever. But what was also interesting, I heard somebody talking about the other day, was that like the Romans, even as like, you know, ancient quote unquote, as their civilization is to us from right now, they revered the Egyptians in that way.
Right.
That like the Egyptians were even more ancient. And yet at the same time, there's all of this like architecture that's the same exact replica, so to speak, of all these different pyramids in all these different geographical locations in times when we, in modern eras, don't think that they had the means to traverse vast distances.
Right.
So how did they
We've got
share
Chichen Itza in Mexico. We've got
Teotihuacan. There's pyramids under the oceans, there's pyramids in Antarctica. But like literally if you plot them out on like Google Earth or whatever, there's a ring. It like
makes a big circle.
Yeah.
So interesting. So what do they think these big columns are? The 6 kilometer. What's right now the current hypothesis, or what's being batted around in the community?
Stuff around like free energy.
Okay.
0 point energy kind of thinking. Again, like I think we're talking like either batteries or generators or something having to do with like pulling energy from the ether.
Okay.
Which like, you know, we could get into that because that was largely a focus of one of the last movies.
So the pillars are almost like coils then.
Yeah. There are coil elements to the pillars.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
It's crazy. It's the buzz right now. So like I was going to be remiss if we
honestly
didn't talk about
escape politics of this country and just focus on the intergalactic politics and the discovery in other places of the world instead.
So there's actually been I can't remember what the document was, but there was like a document that got released, either declassified or hacked or whatever, but it talks about the Galactic Federation. And then there was like a whole, the guy, Alex, I want to say Alex Ferguson, but I know that's not right. I'd have to look it up. But there was a guy that hacked either the NSA or the FBI or like one of the intelligence organizations and found a manifest, like essentially like a roster of all of these beings that were that were part of an organization called Solar Warden, which was essentially like solar system police of our solar system, I think.
Wait, that's a movie.
I don't know if I get that completely right, but like, yeah. But there were humans on board, and then there were non-humans on board.
Viewer discretion is advised.
Space is big, and somebody's gotta patrol it. From asteroid heists and Saturn ring robberies to illegal warp speed races around Jupiter, there's never a dull day for the Solar Warden.
Cover me.
These brave humans and aliens keep the solar system safe. Break cosmic law, and they'll beam you right to space jail. Solar Warden is filmed on location with the cosmic guardians of the solar system. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in intergalactic court.
So, you know, and that's like on a government document kind of a thing. So I don't know. But yeah, we can go back to Bigfoot.
We're going to have a whole separate episode where we talk about that stuff because that is just like so juicy.
But
okay.
But this is the crazy thing about like this whole space is like you get into one part of this thread.
I know. And there's so many different pillars you could be pulled in. And there's so many different.
And then it unravels your reality, which is, I think, the other hard part for people.
That's why I think a lot of people just shut down and choose not to believe it.
Yep.
Like, I think the flat earth of it all is like the most extreme option. But then I think that like there's it's a spectrum.
It's been funny. Like, I still have a really good relationship with my parents, but the first real divergence in terms of like the way I saw things and how they saw things came around cannabis. And like I did this whole deep dive when I was in Costa Rica and was like, oh my God, this plant could literally like save the planet.
Absolutely.
And
Preach.
yeah.
Church of the Sativa.
Yeah. So I came home and I was like singing the gospel, like, oh my God, this plant is literally a miracle to Earth. Like,
Your parents thought you were hooked on drugs.
And well, they were like, it's illegal. So and I was like, yeah, but do you know why? They're like, I don't care. Like, it's illegal. And I'm like, but I can explain to you like the historical perspective that is so fucked that like it should be like not illegal at all.
Right.
We paid taxes with this stuff back in the day. Like,
right.
What are we doing?
Right.
So that's when I knew that like, okay, clearly I'm into like understanding things differently than my parents. And eventually I did get my mom at least to acknowledge that certain things around what I was discovering rattle the paradigm a little more than what she wants to have tolerance for.
Right.
If it gets too big, I don't want to think about things like that big.
Okay, respect.
And I'm like, okay, cool. As long as that's like an established understanding in our like interactions, fine. I'll limit,
I'll respect it, you respect it.
Right.
Right.
And, they were just out here to visit with us after my daughter was born. And,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
He's a dad now. Now he has something to really fight for in the world.
Oh my God.
The pressure goes from zero. It goes from like 2 to like 200.
Yeah. Just I'm like, oh, stay alive. Please just stay alive. No, she's awesome. But yeah, so when they were out here, I think we finally got to have more really real conversations about, my understanding of how the world and reality works and everything like that. And they were able to be like, huh, okay, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about things like that before. And, one of the tells, in terms of what I know versus what they know being indicative of how you interpret certain things
right.
was when the Panama Papers came out, how many ever years ago that was. I was with my parents at a wedding and like the whole, the world basically blew up with that story. And I was just like, oh, well, do you know about Operation Mockingbird? And my dad's like, no. I was like, okay, well, there's a thing called the Mockingbird media and, the CIA and intelligence agencies had like infiltrated all of these different platforms. And basically the news was scripted to adhere to a certain narrative that was put forward by the people in charge. Mm-hmm. And he was like, huh. I was like, but, and they basically just shrugged it off after that. I was like, okay, if we're not going to like be on the same page about stuff like that, then maybe.
It's hard when you're passionate about something and
right.
like you're like, connect with me, loved one, connect with me.
Exactly. And so, obviously getting into like UFOs and Bigfoot, this is even more out there than just like,
we're
smoking
about
a joint
Chewbacca.
or, the CIA being a, corrupt organization. This is literally, okay, that's funny that you say that. Did you know George Lucas found inspiration to create Chewbacca from Sasquatch?
He had to have. Yeah. Do you expect me to believe George Lucas just thought of Chewbacca?
Yeah, right. No way. You can go back to Bigfoot because Bigfoot actually, it's funny. So, okay.
Summer Sasquatch had gender. There were gendered squatches.
Okay. So, right. So there is one of the people that we feature in the film in terms of who we interviewed that was at the Sierra camp. It's up in, I think it's in Northern California. I'm pretty sure it's Northern California. His name's Ron Morehead, and I'm not like giving anything away because his research is like all over the place.
Right.
But he recorded what he believes to be a family of 3 different Sasquatch, a adult male, an adult female, and then an adolescent. Their vocal calls, conversation, whatever, was then analyzed by a guy who considers himself a crypto linguist, I believe was how he
Great title.
Put it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like he analyzes all of their vocalizations and has concluded that he believes that they actually have a language of their own.
Hey, it's me, Lindsay. I'm about to play you some audio, and I kind of wanted to preface what it was. I found this clip from Ron Morehead's presentation 5 years ago, and it's posted on YouTube by the city of Lacey, Washington. And the lecture itself is called Sasquatch Language and Communication, and it looks like it's just an overall recording of a lecture that he's giving at some kind of like Bigfoot Sasquatch like communication
forum. Anyway, I couldn't find the exact audio of 3 Sasquatches talking that Phil is referencing, and that makes sense because Ron sells a lot of his audio on his website. But because he's demonstrating in this lecture samples of things, I am pulling it from that. So you will hear in this clip Ron narrating what he's playing, and you'll hear a conversation between allegedly 2 Bigfoot.
I think whooping sounds, they have different intonations with them. I think their whooping sounds do the same thing. They're trying to see what your reaction is, I think, sometimes, too, because we learn to not jump up and shine a flashlight or anything like that, or they just quit. But this is the night I got to see one when they were making these sounds. So that was an adventurous night. But they seem to know who we are. And David over here, he said they follow him around. They follow a lot of people around. They seem like some people connect up with him and some people don't. My daughter's one of those people. She has encounters. This is 2 of them talking to each other. This was going right outside this shelter. We were all inside this little shelter you seen earlier, and they could be very close to us sometimes, but I never got to see them when we were inside the shelter. The only time I got to see one was when I was outside the shelter and they allowed me to, and that was 1974. That sound right there was in 1972.
Also, there are First Nations tribal members that have claimed to have made a call in their native tongue and had a response in that same language.
Wow.
Yeah. So that also,
cool.
supports the whole idea that they were like tribally integrated to a certain degree.
Right. So you traveled around the U.S. You went to different cities. You met with different people. Mm-hmm. Did you go out into the woods with like a camera crew at any point? Did you like go hunting or like collect B-roll or like what was the mission or operative of going out, and what did you collect or what did you witness?
Okay. I can't say that I necessarily witnessed anything, but what I can talk about was my personal experience.
Right.
Because it's not going to be in the movie, thankfully, I think.
Okay.
So we went to, like I said, we went to rural New York. Mm-hmm. It was just north of like the Pennsylvania-New York border. And we were out with this guy and we'd interviewed him earlier in the day. And he was just like, yeah, I have this big site, this ranch that's like out in the middle of the mountains. And we should go out at night to, try and see if we can get any captures. I was like, okay. We were, getting everything together to go out that night. And I had gone to get waters for everybody because obviously, we don't have a huge crew. It's just like me and a couple other people. By the time I went, and mind you, it was like, 2 minutes away to go to this gas station, also in the middle of nowhere, New York. But came back to the hotel where everybody was, and they were like, okay, Phil, you've been voted the one that's going to go up in the tree stand. And I'm like, what?
What's the tree stand?
So then I'm also thinking like, I'm kind of like taking stock of everybody that I'm with. And I'm like, I guess I am kind of the only person that would make sense to go. Cause like, as the producer, I feel like I'm kind of responsible for everybody,
right,
crew wise. And
what's the tree stand? Is that where you're like kind of overlooking where everyone's place is?
So I got handed a camera, which was not a night vision camera, whatever, a flashlight and a tiny can of bear mace that was like, as big as this glass of water, not like huge.
4 inches tall.
Yeah, very small. And sent up this, ladder into a tree stand about 20 feet in the air. Probably like a little bit after 9 o'clock, when I get sat up there. And mind you, I was under the impression that somebody was going to be staying there with me.
Where were you? What state is this?
New York.
New York.
And it was supposed to be the guide that we had gone out there with that was going to stay with me. Well, he, of course, had to go and set everybody else up. Long story short, I ended up sitting up there by myself. I had a walkie-talkie that we had just gotten that had 5-mile range or something. They were not 5 miles away from me. And I was at the top of this mountain on when you've been driving in rural parts of the country, you know how there's the gas lines where if you look at a mountain, it looks like there was just a buzz cut that the mountain got.
Yes.
Okay, so I was literally on one of those trails, just off the trail, up in a tree stand.
So right on the tree line, probably.
Yeah. So I'm sitting up in this tree stand. I hey, comms check. Nobody's responding to me. I'm okay. So I text the group chat. Nobody's responding to me. I'm okay, so I am isolated and have no means of communication. Awesome.
This is already starting off great.
But I had service. So I text my now wife. I was like, hey, honey, I just want you to know where I am, and I'm by myself.
Smart.
And just wanted to.
Here's the GPS coordinates to call the
Literally,
police if something happens.
I sent her my location.
I would do the same thing. I do the same thing for if I'm walking a block at nighttime in LA.
So I'm up in this tree stand. It was already kind of late dusk, but then it gets to be nighttime, dark. And so my eyes are adjusting, but at the same time I'm trying to capture footage if there's anything kind of weird that I see, but
What are you looking for? Are you waiting to see if a flare goes up by a crew member? Are you looking to see if Bigfoot literally walks by? Are you looking to see?
I didn't know. I had no idea.
You were just waiting.
Yeah. I was up there and they were but if you see a Bigfoot, make sure you get it on film. And I'm thinking to myself,
no shit.
Yeah, duh. That's what we're out here for. Got it.
Noted.
But I also had what they call hunter's headphones, but essentially they're the kind of headphones that you take to the gun range, that if a gunshot goes off, it mutes the gunshot or whatever, but it also amplifies ambient noise.
Oh, so you can hear the deer and stuff?
Literally, I could hear mice rustling in the underbrush.
Oh my God.
That was around me, right? Okay. So I've set the stage in terms of I'm up in this 20 feet tree stand. I'm right off of a trail. I have these headphones on. I have a flashlight that I could use if I needed it, a tiny bear mace, and a camera with a tripod. Mind you, tree stands are no bigger in terms of the footprint that they are, bigger than the chairs that we're sitting on right now.
Okay.
Right? So it's not like I have this fort that I'm working inside
like a 25-inch diameter.
Literally.
Okay.
So I'm sitting up there, no comms, texting my wife, I hope I'm okay. And I saw a couple times there was these little they call them flash bulbs, where it looked like something was on the ground flashing. And it was probably the size of a baseball.
Okay.
From a distance, but what was that? I don't know. Was it anything? Probably not. But then you also saw lightning bugs and things. So I've spent enough time in nature that I could kind of discern that's a weird thing, or that's just a normal thing in nature, right?
Right.
So I'm up there, and finally, eventually, they got service. So they started responding to me. The walkie-talkie still didn't work. So I was like, all right, well, so much for those. But at least I knew that I was in communication and we were texting and stuff. So I was up there for probably 2 hours or so, and it got to be and we had planned on being out there till midnight. Mm-hmm. So it was 11:15-ish, and all of a sudden I hear very distinct crunch, 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 footsteps.
Okay.
And I've also, I said, I was in Boy Scouts and I've been, camping my whole life. I can tell the difference between something with 4 legs and 2 legs.
Yeah.
This thing had 2 legs.
Okay, it had 2 legs. So you thought it was a person from your crew coming to see you?
No.
Maybe that producer guy you're expecting?
No.
It was bigger.
Much.
Shut up.
heavy steps.
What kind of moon did you have that night?
It was a big moon. It was I don't know if it was a full moon, but it was definitely close. Like it was close to a full moon.
Okay.
So it's pitch black. Like I can kind of make out the tree line across the trail, but the trees and the undergrowth were all probably like 15 feet in terms of undergrowth, and the trees were probably like 50 feet tall.
Okay.
So,
Big
and
old trees.
dense underbrush.
Right.
Also, everything in my headphones are amplified.
Right. So it could be within a certain parameter of where you are.
But the only reason I felt like it was something was my whole body. I don't know if you've seen a cat get scared where like its tail fluffs and like all the hair on the back of its neck and stuff stands up.
Yeah.
My whole body felt like that. And
I call it the EBGBs.
yeah, I wouldn't say that I was like or paralyzed in fear.
No.
But
your body sensed
I
something.
was so alert and felt like something was like stalking me. It was very weird. And I've never felt like that in my life.
Okay.
So I heard probably like 10 footsteps. And then they stopped, but my body was still like lit up. And I was like, okay, something's there. And just from like, and I can't tell you how I came up with this number, but it felt like they were probably like 40, 50 feet away from where I was.
Like just checking it out.
Yeah. And
were the steps moving quickly or was it like stalkingly slow?
Slow. Super slow. Like crunch, crunch,
okay,
crunch. And I was like, oh my gosh.
And of course you didn't have night vision on your camera.
Of course not. Because why would, you know.
Did you turn the flashlight on?
No.
You were too scared.
Well, I didn't know, like, any sudden movements. I didn't know, like, what would happen. Like, so much stuff was going through my mind.
I know,
was
you
like,
didn't want to scare it off. You also wanted
am I wanting to get this on film? Am I wanting, like, so, like, I turned the camera and pointed it towards where I thought this thing was. But, of course, the camera doesn't pick up amplified audio like what I have in my headphones.
Right.
So, like, could it hear anything? And by the time I turned the camera on, the footsteps had stopped.
Okay.
So I was basically just shooting black. That lasted for probably like 2.5 minutes or so.
Okay.
And then my body relaxed. So I felt like it went away. I was like, okay. And then I get a text in the group thread. Hey, we're going to stay out until 1:00. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like somebody can come get me. Like I'm ready to leave. Like I've been by myself for now several hours in a place that I don't know. And I'm ready to go.
Right.
And they were like, oh, come on. Like, you know, this is the first time we're out and like actually doing like field work. And I was like, no.
Excited to try
I'm ready to go.
Something. Right.
Thanks. You guys are all together. I'm by myself. I'm ready to go. Thanks. So then they're like, okay, fine. Then, 5-10 minutes later, same thing happens again. Footsteps, my body lights up. But this time they sound like they've gotten closer. Uh-huh. Like, so maybe it was a little bit further back across the trail. This time it's like at the tree line almost, it felt like.
Okay.
But I could hear same like bipedal sounding footsteps, right? Mm-hmm. Body lit up and I'm like, oh shit. I don't like, but I didn't know, like, because the other thing that a lot of people have said is like Bigfoot can be telepathic. So they can like mind speak to you.
Oh my God, what?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So like, again, like.
It's all calling into that like transcendental meditation stuff again.
Exactly.
It's all so tied.
Which is again, why like I'm not ready to like completely discount or discredit the fact that this creature could have these abilities that they've just honed in terms of their kind of attuned nature.
Mm-hmm. Well, so many Earth species actually have something similar to it. The most direct example is my dogs. Sure. They won't necessarily, and it could be physical movements that they're reading in each other, but no, there's been instances where Burton the alpha will communicate on behalf of Archie, and Archie hasn't moved.
Oh yeah.
And Burton knows that Archie has to go outside, so he will tell me that Archie has to go outside. Now that could be him smelling that Archie needs to go outside. It could be a number of things, but I'm just saying in my direct inhabitants, there's instances of non-vocal communication.
100%.
And if I've already experienced that, I can definitely like extend belief that other species, especially if I'm buying into the fact that they can interdimensionally travel,
exactly.
can speak telepathically.
Right. So, yeah. And
Then that's just like how I logically think about this.
Or like
stuff. It's
even
like I break it down.
Look
like
at
that.
like how bees or birds and how
yes,
like
bees
how like
are-
these, you know, these massive formations of birds, like how do they not crash into each other? There's got to be some sort of like communication,
right, when they do those cool swoopy things in the sky where they're like,
or like migrations, or you know, any of those kinds of like natural occurring phenomenon that you can't really explain because they don't verbally communicate. There's got to be some form of communication.
right.
So
So you're like,
So
God,
back
is
to-
Bigfoot reading my mind right
back
now?
to New York.
It's Bigfoot in my head right
So second, I don't want to say interaction because it's not like it responded to me, but second instance of like being, you know, super alert, we'll call it. And I was like, okay, like I'm just reiterating to you guys in texting. I'm like, I'm reiterating, I'm ready to go. And they're like, okay, Todd's coming to get you. All right, cool. So
now. Todd, bring the night vision camera. Heads up.
that's like a whole nother part of this
Heads up,
conversation.
buddy, Todd.
So then they're like, okay, he's coming. I'm like, all right. So it's probably like 11:45, and the third and final time that I got the feeling and heard the footsteps, it felt and it sounded like it was literally directly under me. Mind you, I'm like 20 feet in the air.
At the base of this thing.
At the base of the tree. And I will never forget looking over the edge of the tree stand and thinking to myself, hello, Bigfoot. I'm not here to like encroach on your territory, and I mean you no harm. And that's literally like all I thought. And as soon as I like finished that thought to myself, I saw headlights of the side-by-side that the guy that was coming to get me was riding in, and then it crested over onto the trail, and then I saw the headlights, and it drove up and came to where I was.
In the nick of time.
Literally. So, you know, he's just like, how you doing? I'm like, and I'm shaking at this point, because I'm like, I don't know what just happened. I can't tell you.
Could you hear any breathing or anything?
No.
Okay.
It was literally just footsteps.
Thank God. If I heard breathing, I would have died.
Yeah, that probably would
If
have
you heard
like,
an exhale,
or like a,
oh my God.
I would have lost it.
I would have peed my pants.
Lost it.
I would have literally peed my pants and been like, Todd, bring some extra pants.
Yeah. So he comes.
That, or I get, one of two things happens. I get scared and I get quiet, or I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna die. I'm just gonna, and I would have descended the thing and I would have been like, where are you?
Well, and that's kind of the crazy thing. So like, you know, he came and, you know, parked the side by side. He's like, are you all right? And like, I'd, you know, get myself untangled from all this stuff that I had taken up there and the camera and whatever. And he's like, are you all right? I was like, not really. You know, I just had a really weird experience. And he's just like, what do you mean? I'm like, and I told him the story. He goes, you just had an encounter. That's what it's like. And I'm like, okay, I understand now what people have described. Sure.
Right.
But I'm not ready to like necessarily make the leap in, you know, an assured, guaranteed, bet my life on it, that was Bigfoot 100%
Right.
sort of attitude. Like, what could it have been? I don't know. Could it have been Bigfoot? Sure.
Could also been a serial killer.
Right.
Could it?
that doesn't have exfiltration footsteps.
Right.
You know, but that's another crazy thing about like some of the people's testimony that we got is like tracks, like people will often find like one single track. Explain that to me. Do these things not have 2 feet? Do they just like step in one place and then like teleport away?
Yeah, that
like,
makes no sense.
Right. It's very baffling. There's a case where, you know, these footsteps like come out of nowhere and then stop, and there's no continuation of the footsteps, and they were in the snow. So like, how did it just like come from somewhere and then go to somewhere with like a defined start and stop that didn't.
Right. One step is weird.
Right. And if there's like 5 steps, okay, but like where to come from and where to go.
Pretty cool experience to have in the woods going out to shoot a Bigfoot thing, though.
I mean,
if I was, you know,
maybe, sure. Like
next to meeting Harry and the Hendersons, which is like one of my favorite Bigfoot movies.
It's yeah, that's definitely one of the classics. And like, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't discount the existence of this thing. I think it's like based on the amount of people and like the researchers and
what was the crew doing out? Were they just like looking for evidence of it, or like waiting similar to you? What were they doing out there in the woods while you were
similar,
there?
Sort of like they were in different spots. Like I was up like high on a mountain. They were more like
in the valley.
into the mountain, kind of, so to speak. Just at like a different area, but it was like across a valley. So like, yeah, if that makes sense. But yeah, they were like, you know, camped out. Like we had a camera guy and an audio recordist that were together, and they had some crazy stuff happen with their equipment. Like all of a sudden, all the audio went from like recording to not.
Right.
In terms of like the dBs that were coming into the devices, just like stopped.
Yeah.
And it went to be like it was silent, even though they were talking and like whispering, and like even whispers will show up on like readings or whatever. But
I
like,
know that.
nothing.
I watch a lot of my sister and I watch a lot of ghost investigation shows. We are master ghost investigators.
And then as soon as they would turn the recording equipment away from where they had been pointed and it went silent,
it would work again. Almost like it's blocking, like it's setting out jammers or something like that. Which I've heard. I mean, that's not the first time I've heard that. I've heard that with extraterrestrial stuff too. Is like that they have that ability.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it makes sense if they have the ability. If you buy into that they have the ability to like travel different dimensions or like through different space and time, they should at least have a signal jammer or like that just feels like
low level,
pretty basic.
Low level force control.
I feel like
stuff.
humans can figure that out. So why wouldn't they have something like that?
Right.
But wow, that's cool.
So yeah, not going to be in the movie, but your my firsthand experience, and I'll take that to the bank.
Damn, I wish he climbed up there with you, though.
I am thankful that it didn't, because that would have been very intense.
Well, no, maybe not. Maybe you could have been friends.
Maybe. I mean,
what if it was a chick? What if it was a girl Squatch and she was really kind of into you?
Also,
you're a tall guy.
Crazy stories that we've heard. Like I said, we talked to and heard from a lot of different people.
Did someone have sex with a Sasquatch?
Mm-hmm. Or at least they claim that they did. They said that a female Sasquatch came into their cabin in the middle of the woods and climbed into bed with them and raped them. Yeah. That one's not on camera, so like I don't feel bad telling that story. But yeah, like there was another lady who was in her probably 40s or 50s that we heard from, again, not on camera. So again, I don't feel bad telling the story. But she described as a child, a Bigfoot mother, another female Bigfoot, came to her house, reached in her window.
Oh my God.
Pulled her out of bed, took her back to their lair, cave, dwelling. Thank you. And let this child play with the Bigfoot children. And there were multiple of them. And then when they were done playing after a little while,
brought her home.
Wait,
that's so cute. Play date. Squatch play date.
Isn't it's wild, right?
I don't, the rape story is wild.
I mean, that's like scratching the surface.
Was that female Squatch? How did he get aroused? I would be so scared. Did she have magical?
I mean, if they can mind speak,
she can boner whisper.
Yeah, whisper sweet nothings and get that ready. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like if I was a man and I was in the woods and was he looking for Bigfoot, or was he just like living his life, fishing or something?
Like living his life.
Damn, could you imagine?
I mean, I can, because I heard him describe it.
If I was a dude, I'd probably do it
it
just to see like what.
I mean, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty nuts. Pretty
nuts. That sounds
Anyways,
crazy. Okay,
yeah.
well that's wild. This has been so interesting.
So yeah, that's the director's calling me right now. So
Well, hey, speak of the devil.
Right.
His ears must be burning.
I think they are.
When does the movie come out? Do you know yet?
We don't have a release date yet. Like I said, we're still kind of in the final stages of post,
Right.
but we should be wrapped up hopefully by like early summer. So maybe a late summer Q3 release.
Okay. Do you have a distributor already attached to it, or is that next?
That's next.
So it could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll keep the audience in tune with
I'll
the
keep you
news.
posted, for sure.
Great. This was
Absolutely.
awesome. Thanks for coming on and talking
Thanks for
about
having me.
this. And we
Yeah,
have to have you back to talk more
Hey,
about.
I'm full of crazy stories.
I know you are. We have to talk about like the greater verse of
Listen,
supernatural.
what I would love to end this conversation on like a positive note.
Okay.
So the Hopi Indian tribe has the prophecy that was like scribed in stone, and there are interpretations that say humanity is on a divergent path. On one path, the line squiggles to an end, and humanity would cease. On the other trajectory, humanity goes on forever. I like to think that if the collective consciousness of humanity can reach the tipping point where the stuff that we've already talked about in this conversation becomes the pervasive norm, and, you know, the 100th monkey effect or whatever, you know, belief you have in terms of how ideas disseminate through, you know, consciousness of society, I think we can course correct and get onto that lives forever line.
Okay, great. I love that.
We can't be like doom and gloom about everything, even though like
okay,
there's a
I'll
lot
stop.
of like there's a lot of doom and gloomy stuff that like, you know, still impacts our day-to-day lives. And like,
There's
you know,
still lots of hope.
yeah, you don't lose sight of that, I guess, is the underlying point.
I mean, I'm just hoping that the Guatemalan ocean aliens come and help us, like restore, at least like save the ocean, because they live in there.
There's a lot of people that say that, you know, that's part of, you know, some species of extraterrestrials' intention is to, you know, assist humanity in lasting, so that we don't either like.
We're just toddlers out here.
Oh, I wouldn't even give us toddlers.
We're smashing and burning everything, like our toys, or we're dumping them on the floor, and we're just like, someone help us.
Yeah, we're poisoning everything around us and
Killing all the cute animals.
And we have nuclear
Did you
bombs that we
read
could
the
drop.
the BBC posted this thing the other day about there's a climate meeting, and now people are saying it's real estate people meeting, but they literally bulldoze through the rainforest to make a road so they could have the meeting in this city. I'm like, who chose that fucking city?
Yeah, idiots.
Can't you meet in
Or like, you know,
London?
or,
Can't you meet in?
or the fires in Hawaii, and it just happened to have the future smart city meeting that happened in the same place that they
Right.
wanted to make the smart city, and maybe smart LA 2028, and the fires that happened. And, you know, there's all sorts of like, you know, nefarious associations that you can make for everything that's happening right now. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist in that sense, so I won't say that that's for sure why
Right.
and how things are happening.
Right, we're not insinuating there's a giant chess game at play, but people
nor
do
a
believe.
galactic one. at
Nor
that
a
point.
galactic. Oh my God! Stop.
Yeah.
I need a joint for that conversation.
Yeah.
But okay, where can people find out more? Because you spoke so eloquently about all of this stuff.
Oh, thank you. I'm not super active on like any of my social medias right now, sadly, but
Just keep an eye out for Phil's name.
Yeah.
Podcasts coming out with Phil. and
at
stuff.
Phillip James Latham, I think on Twitter and Instagram. I'm not on Facebook a whole lot anymore because like
Who is?
You know, well, my parents and stuff, and there's a lot of people that still stay in touch that way. But yeah, there's some good cool stuff on the horizon outside of these couple film projects that I've talked about that I'm working on. So I would love to come back.
We'll have to have you come back. We'll talk
more.
about cannabis. We'll talk about
yeah.
we'll talk about extraterrestrial alien stuff. We'll
Hell
talk.
yeah.
We have to go to Egypt.
For sure.
I'm gonna work-
Hey,
I'm
yo,
actually gonna-
whoever you are, Lindsay's friend that was like able to sponsor us, like, let's go.
Low key. When you leave, I'm gonna call him.
Yeah,
I'm gonna call him the
I love
second you
it.
leave, and that's my new little project. While we're waiting
Sick.
to hear back from
Let's
these
do it.
actors that haven't gotten back to us yet on
It's
the
okay.
script.
It's all good.
But it'll all happen in divine timing.
When it's supposed to happen, it'll happen.
It was great to have you on. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that's it for this week's episode. Big thanks to my friend, producer Phillip James Latham, for joining me and sharing all those incredible and honestly kind of terrifying Bigfoot stories. And of course, thanks to all of you for listening. I know I say this a lot, but if you enjoyed today's adventure into the unknown, please leave a rating wherever you're listening from and subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps reward all the late night Bigfoot research I did and snacks I put into making this show possible. Seriously, if you haven't reviewed the show yet and you haven't subscribed yet, just do it. That way, every time you hear me talk about it, you can go, I already did, Lindsay, because I'm a real friend. And remember, Bigfoot believes in you, even if you're not sure if you believe in Bigfoot. See you next week.